He can cook a shoe and it'll taste delicious. You don't even have to bring your own, he says. And that's neat. It's Tom White. This is Teaching to the Test Pattern.
Welcome to Teaching to the Test Pattern. What's up, buddy? I'm Tom White. I'm your host, and this is part 3 of my conversation with Chris Williams. He is the Chief Product Officer at iHeart Media, and he and I worked together for about 6 years in Atlanta. And in this episode, we talk about something that I think is very, very important, both in the radio world and in media in general, and I think that it applies directly to our classrooms, and that's target audience. We talk about a guy named Mike, and it's not hyperbole that we took an entire we had an assignment, and I want to say it was a week that we had to come up with who Mike was, and Mike didn't have a name at the time, who our target audience was, and you're going to hear about that and why that was important to what we did then and what Chris does now and what I think you should do in your classroom. It'd be a great exercise for your students to be able to put a name and a face with exactly who they're trying to reach and create a common a common idea of who that person or persons may be. Chris also gives some advice on if you're trying to get started, what you need to do. As a teacher, it's something that I've told students for years. It's something that I believe in. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think about it until this conversation, that it was something that I had done in my career. It wasn't on purpose. It was that I liked what I did. And it's the same thing I do now. I love what I get to do now. So it applies now to me as well. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank Amitrace.com for making it possible for me to do this show. You're at the point now where you're probably thinking, what do I do next year in my classroom? What can I do to make my room better? What can I do to make my productions better? What am I going to do with this camera that still shoots to tape? What about this switcher that is just as brown and dingy as the halls in my building? Amitrace, Amitrace.com. Go check them out right now, because you're not going to get you're not going to have a better situation for how to get what you need to get done. You're going to forget things if you do it yourself. You're going to regret things if you do it yourself. I do. I totally do. When I opened my current facility in 2018, I regret not calling Amitrace. I was too smart to do that. I was the smartest kid in the room, and just completely, there are things that I wish I hadn't bought and things that I wish I had. If I'd used Amitrace, wouldn't have had that situation. Amitrace.com. Now, here is part 3 and the finale in my conversation with Chris Williams, Chief Product Officer at iHeart Media.
Teaching to the Test Pattern.
And I'm gonna go on a tangent off of what we talked about. We were going to talk about and talk about and make it relevant to my video teachers as well as my students. And one of the points that I drive home a lot is target audience. We spent with Project. I remember one specific day we went downstairs and we spent the entire day figuring out who Mike was.
That's right.
And we housed everything around Mike, and we had pictures of Mike. We knew who, and that's one of those things that I think, I don't think that if you've never been in that situation, or if you're not creating content, you don't think about that. Do you think that was why Project was so successful, was because we literally went, okay, there's Mike?
I think so. And I think it was also because we, from the beginning, decided to make it a lifestyle brand. You know, if you listen to radio stations, I think everybody will be able to recognize this. You're going to hear radio stations that their slogan is #1 hit music station. Their slogan is the best hits of the 70s, 80s, and today. Their slogan is soft rock and your 80s favorites. Okay, that's a description of music. I get that. That's the ingredients. iHeartRadio, Project 961's slogan was live loud, play hard. Now, music is a part of that. Playing the right music to help allow you to live loud, play hard is part of that. But guess what? For us, so was NASCAR. So was motocross. So was giving away muscle cars. So was throwing really crazy, outrageous parties. So was throwing live concert events. It was a lifestyle brand that was focused on speaking to Mike. It wasn't just, here is a list of ingredients that we think would make for a good playlist that Mike might like. It's how could we become an integral part of all of the passion points that Mike has in his life, and how can we have that conversation with him about all of those passion points.
And one of the things that we did that I use in my classroom and I talk with my students a lot is we made sure that we were in all the places we should have been, but then in the places where we probably shouldn't have been. Right. Our biggest party every year was steeplechase. And right. If you look on the surface, horse racing, middle of nowhere, big hats, seersucker suits, not Project 961, but we always threw down. And it was one of those things where people go, why are you going to steeplechase? Because we need to be at steeplechase.
That's right. And because guess what? You do at steeplechase, drink.
Yeah. Drink.
So we can make steeplechase we can make it a drinking party, and we can go hire the best barbecue joint in Georgia to cater our party. We can go get an awesome bourbon brand to cater our party. And we got barbecue and bourbon and beer, and we're going to be out of this party, and everybody else can be in their big floppy hats and wearing their date dresses or sundresses or whatever you go. And here we are. That's where everybody wanted to be. They wanted to be in the project tent.
Oh yeah. We'll save those for off-air conversations. So what was a normal day like for you in New York before the lockdown?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would go. That's the biggest. I'd go somewhere. We have a wonderful space down in Soho, Tribeca, and a team about 160 people that are co-located. We also have remote teams, around the country, but in Nashville and in Orlando and folks in Canada, et cetera. But the vast majority of the team is based in New York. And so I'd go in and I typically sit with the marketing pod and talk to them all day. And I think that's the biggest difference, is that I interacted with people in real life on a daily basis versus interacting via Zoom.
Gotcha. So what do you think is the biggest challenge in what you do overall?
Prioritization. I mean, there's not a time that the product is ever complete, and there's always a master list of. I truly, like, I sit here and I have lists and lists right now of things that as I go through the app, I go, man, wouldn't it be nice if it did this? Should we prioritize that here? I mean, we're on over 250 different platforms. So each one is in various states of, this one's brand new. This one is a 4-year-old code and needs to be upgraded. There's a whole new feature set that would be nice to launch. Wouldn't this be great? No matter how many people you hire, more people just also means more ideas. So resources are always going to be scarce when compared against the list of things that there are to do. And so it's a matter of really listening to, as kind of the same thing we were just talking about, Mike, who was our target listener. He was the guy that we said, this is the lens through which we're going to try to make our programming decisions. We have to do the same. We look and we have a list of all of these things that we could do. And the voice of the customer is the one that has to help guide us and say, all right, well, this is the most important because it's the biggest pain point, the biggest problem that I have with the product now. Or this is the most important because it's the innovation that if you brought to market would have me be the most excited about continuing to use your product or adopting your product. But there's just a lot that goes into. It's easy to frankly, it's easy to come up with a lot of great ideas. And I'm surrounded by so many smart, creative people that we've got those for days and days and days. The hard part is getting in there, doing the research, doing the analysis, and arm wrestling over, of the 30 great ideas that we've got, unfortunately, we're only going to be able to do 10 this year. That's it. And it's just resources, what resource is. How do we decide how do we decide the ones that we do? That's tough. That's a really tough one. And it's always frustrating because you're scared that you might what if you get it wrong? What if you left one on the table that would have been, the next TikTok?
Yeah. So what, in your role, what is the biggest reward you get?
Well, it's pretty incredible, the scale that we're able to reach. And oftentimes, and I have to remind myself and I have to remind my team over and over again. I mean, just last week, we eclipsed 140 million registered users on iHeart across 5 countries. We're in the US, Mexico, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And so you wind up, it's funny as you start having conversations, you're like, well, if we don't do that, how many people it will impact? And we're like, well, it's only 350 people are going to have an outage if we do that. And we go, okay, great. And then you have to stop and go, only 350? What do you mean? Only 350,000? I'm sorry, 350,000. We throw around millions like they're nothing. Like, oh, well, we just had 1 million people visit the site today. And we're like, oh, okay. And you're like, no, a million human beings. And so to reach that many is amazing. And frankly, it's funny the number of things that are so analogous to programming a radio station. The excitement of pulling up to a red light and having your windows down and hearing the person in the car next to you playing the radio station that you program. Oh man, that never got old. I'm that way I go in and spend the weekends reading App Store reviews and Google Play Store reviews and reading people say, right now, even especially, oh my, thank you so much that iHeartRadio is here. It allows me, I've been at home for the past 4 weeks and I've been binge listening to podcasts and this is the only thing that's kept me sane. Or, oh my goodness, I've been able to listen back home to the radio station that I grew up with. And that really makes me, that's such a great thing to be able to stay connected with the sense of home and to read through and hear the passion that people have for the stations, for the music, for the podcast, and the role that we get to play in bringing that to people. That's the same as being at that red light and hearing people playing the radio station that you poured your heart into and having it cranked up to 11. I love that. That is so fulfilling to be able to see drill down from 140 million, amazing. And numbers just become these huge things. And all of a sudden drill down and read one App Store review and go, wow, this really matters to that person. This isn't just one of 140 million. To them, this really matters. And we played a really important role in enriching their life today because of the service that we put out. That's awesome. That's a really fun thing to be able to do.
And it's one of those things that you never think about. You never think about the impact. And, as we were talking earlier, we talked about, missing handshakes and bro hugs and smiles and those things. I miss listening to podcasts. I could do it all day long. I don't want to walk around my house with headphones in, but when I'm in my car an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, I listen to podcasts and I miss that. But I also look forward to when everything gets back. I got a backlog to, because there were days I would go, oh man, there's nothing new to listen to because I'd already caught up on everybody and nobody pushed any new content out.
It's amazing though. I'm the same because I had my commute rituals. And as I would go into the office in the morning, because I'm on the subway, I'd listen to the Daily. And that was perfect. Underground, I have the podcast downloaded to my phone, and I'd listen to the Daily. And by the time I got into the office, I felt like I knew something. And then when I get out of the office, commuting to the gym, I'd listen to something like Disgraceland or podcasts like that. And so I absolutely bookended my commutes with podcast listening. And without a commute, I'm the same. I don't find it's difficult to find the time in your home to listen to a podcast because I find that they are headphones on. I'm leaning in and paying attention and somebody's telling me a story. I have a hard time having a podcast on as background noise because I get distracted too easily. And I find that I'm like, what has he been saying for the past 3 minutes? I don't know who anybody is anymore. Who are the characters that he's talking about? It's not great passive listening. It really is a lean in.
Yeah. I listened to Bert Kreischer and Joe Rogan and then a couple of others, but what I timed it out to where, because Joe's stuff's 2-3 hours long. So that's a day and a half. And then Kreischer's a day or so. And then just a rotation. And now, like, I listened yesterday on my way into work, and I was like, man, I haven't heard this guy in forever. And,
Right.
it was eye opening for me. So as we start to close, what would you say to someone thinking about getting into audio production or any of that, podcast, radios, any of that? What would you say to them now in 2020, looking forward? Now we're talking to students and we're talking to teachers primarily, to get them into the right mindset for what they're going to do.
Yeah. Podcasting is a great place to get started. It's a great way to experiment. It's a great way to test your storytelling abilities. It's a great way to succeed and fail because it costs nothing. The barrier of entry is so low, and it takes a while to find your voice, and it takes a while to learn how to tell stories. It takes a while to refine ideas and get them to a good place, but it's an exciting medium to be able to do that. And there's great opportunities there. So it really is, kind of what I mentioned about, if you put 10 hours a week into something, the amount of time it's going to take you to become an expert in that thing is probably going to be measured in decades rather than years. I would say the same. If you're trying to get into audio production, you're trying to get into podcasting or radio, a couple hours a week isn't going to get you there very quickly, because there's so much to learn that the more that you can invest your time in doing, the faster you're going to figure out all the things that you're doing wrong. Mm-hmm. If you wait till you feel like you know how to do it, it'll never happen. The best way to do it is just start publishing terrible podcasts, to start producing terrible music, just to create a horrible digital radio station. It's the best way to do it. And then over time, you're going to find that you'll look back and you'll be 30 podcasts in and go back and listen to number one. And you're going to go, oof.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing ever. By the way, that's the best sign that you're learning and that you're getting better. If you listen to number one when you're on number 30 or number 40 or number 50 and you go, sounds the same, then something's wrong. It should be cringy to you to go back and listen to the first ones that you did. But you got to do a bunch over and over and over and over again. And that speeds up that learning curve. The reason that people flame out is they do so little over such long stretches of time that the progress is almost imperceivable. And so they get frustrated and they quit. If you do things really fast, if every single day, if you did a podcast every day and it was only 5 to 10 minutes long, in 100 days, you'd have 100 episodes. Oh, do you know how much better you would be 100 episodes in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of those things that's the persistence that we talked about earlier. So one question to go. What are 3 things that people don't know about what you do?
Probably that everywhere I go, I have a musical soundtrack accompanying me. It's a piano score playing in the background. The other great part of work from home is that, when it's piano lesson time, it's piano lesson time.
Well, I sent my mother needed some groceries, so I sent Kelly and TJ for that, and Lila's painting, so it's just quiet right now at my house.
That's funny. I think about what I do specifically, it's probably just that, I am still an individual contributor, meaning I'm not a manager of people. I write I work with somebody and we write every single promo that airs about iHeartRadio on all of the 850 stations nationwide. That's not farmed out. I don't manage a guy who does it. I write those things. There are radio stations on iHeartRadio like Alternative Rewind, which is an 80s alt station. There Smells Like the 90s, which is a 90s alt station. There is what I think is the best yacht rock playlist that you'll find on any service anywhere in the world. I program those things. Like I still have a hand in programming stations, in curating playlists, in creating promo content, in coming up with ideas and so, I think that probably what people expect is that a lot of times, particularly as titles start to get more and more snazzy, that people become more and more removed from the actual doing and they're more the telling. And for me, it's that hasn't been the case. I have a real hard time. I struggle with management. I struggle with finding value in managing people and not also producing some material at the end of the day. And so I continually keep my hands in the mix and participate in whatever's going on. So, I think that's the big one for me. And until recently, I was also still on the air. I was doing a weekend shift on Alt 105.7, RIP, as we talked about stations that have changed formats. But yeah, I continued to do an air shift on Alt 105.7 just because, my roots were I just wanted to be a DJ, man. I mean, that was it. At the end of the day, as a 16-year-old going and knocking on the door at that radio station in Athens, my aspiration was I just wanted to be a DJ. I had no idea that would lead to me becoming interested in, well, how is this station program? Well, how do I participate in how we program this station and the voice of the station and the music and okay, I want to do more behind the scenes. And that behind the scenes turned into more digital, and that more digital turned into, well, come and run this digital service. All of that was, the genesis of all of that was, I just wanted to be a DJ. I just wanted to be on the radio and to play music and talk to folks. So, as much as, whenever possible, I still throw my headphones back on and still do an air shift. And like I said, up until recently, I was doing a regular weekend air shift on Alt 105.7 as I commute back and forth from New York to Atlanta. I still live in Atlanta, and I commute up to New York Monday through Friday, work, come back on Friday nights. And then on the weekend, I would go over to Alt 105.7 and I would pull a weekend air shift just so I could, stay with what my original goal was just to be a DJ.
And I think that probably helps you in your position to remember what it's like to be in that room. I think that, as you get, not you, but as people progress up the proverbial ladder, they kind of get distanced from,
absolutely,
what really is happening. And it just changes the way you think about things, as long as if you can't stay rooted like that.
Yeah. And I think it's impossible for that not to happen to some level. And I'm sure that there's plenty of things that I come up with that are ideas that other folks go, man, you're so disconnected from reality. That's not the same thing that, we probably, people that we work for, we roll our eyes at them and go, bruh, that's not the way the world works anymore. I'm sure I have those moments, but I do go out of my way to try to have those touch points to where I can minimize that, if at all possible. Yes, you're right. Just being in the studio, using the equipment today, talking to the audience in real time helps to try to shorten that knowledge gap that would be there.
Gotcha. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time, and
my pleasure.
It's been
always.
It's been fun. It's been a good catching up, and again, just stay safe, and maybe I'll get up there. Maybe New York will open back up before the summer, and I can finally take my daughter to New York like I've promised her for a year now.
Hey, I look forward to a handshake and a bro hug.
Yes, sir. Well, have a good one. I appreciate it again.
Bye, T. White.
Teaching to the test pattern.
That wraps up my conversation with Chris Williams from iHeart Media. I want to thank Chris for his time. He's working from home in Marietta with a group of people who are literally all over the country, including a majority who are in New York City right now during this pandemic. Crazy, crazy times. One of the things I want to point out that I alluded to in the wrap up of that conversation there was having a leader who is still engaged on the ground. And that's one of the things that Chris does. And I know without a doubt that it helps him understand what's going on in the studios across the country that he may be managing or pushing content to or what have you. Kind of the same thing goes with what we do in education. If we as teachers aren't continually being students, then we don't understand the students. And if you're an administrator or your administrator isn't engaged in the classrooms, then they don't understand what's happening in the classrooms. So as a teacher, I hope that you remain engaged in what your students are doing and what you need to be doing. You need to be learning things. You can't say, well, I'm an old guy or I'm the old gal, I'm not going to learn anything new. You can't do that, because the minute you do that, the minute you start underserving your students. At the point you can't understand what it is to learn, it's the point that you need to quit teaching. All right, I'm still going to step down off my soapbox. I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you got something from it. I hope you got something you can share with your students. I hope Hope it empowered you. That's kind of what I wanted to talk with Chris about, was showing persistence, showing that you can take steps to do the right things as leaders and as educators, and run your classroom like it's a true brand or a business or what have you, and just go out and do really, really amazing, awesome things. And I hope that you can do that. And if you need help doing that, call my sponsor, Amitrace, Amitrace.com, Amitrace.com. That is Amitrace. They can make sure that you get where you need to go. Thank you so much again for listening. Have a great day. Bro hugs for everybody, and go make some awesome.
Teaching to the test pattern.